So in this session, we will start with the risk management. Like what is risk management, and what are the types of risk analysis, etc. So, can you tell me what is risk?
What is
Risk.
risk means see, if anyone trying to steal our information, that is risk, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone
So we
steal
can
or
say that
anything.
risk is any uncertainty or any bad happening or any unexpected event that is known as risk. So here, how we can manage the risk? That is like the question in terms of cybersecurity. So first, here we have risk. So any uncertainty or any unexpected event we can call as risk. And what is risk management? So any unexpected event, so we have to handle any unexpected event in terms of business. So that so only can we can run the business. Because if we cannot able to handle risk, so how we can like continue the business? So it is same in the cybersecurity. We have unexpected events, we have unexpected attacks, we have unexpected human errors, we have unexpected natural calamities. So these are all part of risk. So understanding so understanding and applying risk management concepts is crucial for organization to effectively protect their assets and mitigate potential threats. So what is the use of risk management? So that we can mitigate or we can resolve risk. So we can do two of them. Like either we can mitigate, which is like we can reduce the risk, or we can resolve the risk completely, which is like destroy or like finish the risk completely. So we can do either of them. So the provided information covers key aspects of risk management, including its purpose, elements, associate terminology. So here we have risk management. So risk management is a detailed process that involves first identifying factors that could damage or disclose assets, then evaluating these factors based on asset value and countermeasure cost, and implementing cost effective solution to mitigate or reduce risk. So here risk management is a very detailed process, which is it includes first identifying the factors that cause damage or disclose assets or disclose any confidential information, disclose your data, whatever. Okay, so first we have to identify the risk. Okay, then can evaluate these factors based on asset value. Like if we can see, then we can evaluate risk, which is AB, which is like asset valuation. Like we are providing a dollar value to the assets. Let's say you have 5 assets in your company. Asset can be anything. It can be intangible or tangible. Intangible means the assets which you cannot touch, and tangible are the assets which you can touch. For example, tangible assets we have PC, servers, etc., or hardware devices or networking devices. And intangible assets are like softwares which you cannot touch, but you can use it. You can see it. Okay. So these are the assets. So intangible or tangible. So we are providing a dollar value to your assets. Let's say this asset. This one is a PC. So we are assigning this our dollar value to PC. Let's say the value of this asset is $1,000. Okay. Then this is known as asset valuation. That we are providing a dollar value to an any asset, and then countermeasure cost and implementing the cost effective solution to mitigate or reduce risk. So this is like four-way process. First, identifying the cause of the risk or the risk itself. Then identifying the impact of the risk. Let's say you are facing 5 risks in your company. Then you are prioritizing the risk on the basis of the risk value. For example, how we can value the risk, or how we can check if this risk is higher, or which risk is higher or low. Let's say we have a matrix which is known as risk matrix. So in the risk matrix we have 3 values, which we have high, we have low, and then we have medium risk. So we are putting a tag, or we are putting a value to the risk, like which risk is low, which risk is high, or which risk is medium. But how we can say that this risk is high or this risk is low? Because of the impact of the risk. Impact of the risk. Let's say you are, let's say we have a DOS attack. So what is the impact of this DOS attack? Or what is the impact of the malware attack? What is the impact of the SQ injection attack? So these are the attacks. So we are checking what is the impact of a particular risk. So this is how we are calculating the risk, which risk is high, which risk is low, and which risk is medium. So we are just putting a kind of value to the risk. And with this value, we are prioritizing the risk. Like we are giving the priority. If you have 5 risks in your company, let's say you are facing the 5 risks. So you are like evaluating which risk is high. Let's say out of 5 risks, you are facing 2 risks are high and 3 risks are low, and 1 risk is let's say 5 risks. Okay, 3 risks are low or 2 risks is are like high. So first we are prioritizing the high risk. Okay, so we will just fix the high risk first. We will take priority. We will just apply the countermeasure, or we can apply any safeguard to reduce the risk. That is what prioritizing means. Okay, and how we are prioritizing? On the basis of risk metrics. So it can be high, low, medium, or it can be in terms of numbers, which is 1 to 10. So we are providing a rating. If the risk have 10 rating, which is like the risk is very high. If the risk has like 1 rating, which is the risk is very low. And then we have number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. So we can also put check risk in terms of numbers and in terms of this risk matrix. Okay. So this is like how we can check risk if this risk is high or if this risk is low.
Hello?
Okay. Because of the impact of the risk, like what is the impact of the risk in that particular scenario or in that particular asset. That is how we are calculating. Let's say you have a server and that server can face DOS attack in the near future. So here we can evaluate this risk. First, we can evaluate. Yeah. So first we can evaluate the value of your asset. And second, we can evaluate the risk, like the impact of the risk. Okay. And third, we can evaluate the likelihood of the risk, like how much there's a list, like how much the chances of the reoccurrence of any risk. Okay, let's say this DOS attack can occur, or this risk of DOS attack can occur like 3 times in a year. So this is like likelihood of a risk. So how we can basically calculate a risk? We are calculating the risk with the likelihood into the impact of the risk. Or there's one more formula of calculating the risk, which is like threats into vulnerability, which is like the universal formula. Okay, so you have 2 formulas. First, you are calculating the likelihood of or the reoccurrence of the risk and the impact of the risk. Okay, this is how you can calculate the risk factor, like which risk is high, which risk is low, or which risk is medium. Okay, and second formula is we can calculate the threat into vulnerabilities. Okay, for each asset. So there's one more concept of like threat, which is known as threat modeling. So in the threat modeling, we have a concept that is we are pairing the asset and threat together. Okay, let's say you have 5 assets. Let's say you have 5 PC of different architecture of different OS. Let's say. So now we are calculating the threats, and let's say you have a list of threats. Let's say you have 5 threats or 5 latest threats. What are threats? Threats can be anything. Threats can be any attack. Threats can be any malware, or threats can be any kind which can harm your system. Okay, so these are threats. So let's say we have a list of 5 threats which can harm your PC. So now we are calculating the threat modeling. In the threat modeling, what we are doing, we are just like putting your asset and threat pairing. Like we are pairing the asset with the threat. So let's say we have 5 threats. So we are checking if this PC is vulnerable to these 5 threats or not, or if this PC number 2 is vulnerable to these 5 threats or not. Then PC number 3, then PC number 4, and then PC number 5. So we are calculating the risk factor with the threat modeling concept. Threat modeling says that we are pairing the asset and threat together. And this is like a very complex process. Let's say here you have 5 devices. Let's say in the big organization, you have 500 devices, and even you have like 500 assets. Now you are pairing the assets with the threats which are in the market. Let's say we are talking about the latest threats. Even we are not considering the outdated threats. We are just taking the latest threats which are in the market. Okay. Now let's say you have a list of 500 threats. Now you are pairing that 500 threats with the 500 asset. Now you can wonder like how many combination we are making. For example, with the first asset, we are checking those 500 threads. Like we are checking if this asset is vulnerable to these 500 threads or not. If it is, then it is the risk, and we can calculate it as a risk. And if it is not, then we can see okay, this system is secured. So you can imagine like we have 500 asset, even we have more asset. We have intangible assets, we have tangible assets. So here we are calculating that we have a number of assets here and we have number of threads here. Now we are pairing each and every thread with each and every asset. So now you can imagine how many possible combination we are making here. Okay, which is like 500 assets with 500 threads. Means for each and every asset you are checking the 500 threads. And now for the second number asset you are checking again the 500 threads. So this is a very very complex process. So for that you can categorize the threads also. For example, categorizing the threads means, let's say you are running, you have OS. Let's say you have Windows OS. So out of 500, 300 threads are of Windows or 200 threads are of Linux. Because threads are of depends on your system architecture, your system mechanism, which OS you are using, which ports are open, whatever the version is. So that depends. Now we can just put a category here, which is like 300 of windows. Now we can only check 300 threads for each and every window and 200 threads for each and every Linux. So you can categorize the threads to make your work easy. Okay, but it is also a very complex process because we are like numerous number of assets and we have numerous number of threads here in the market. So you have to keep on checking for each and every thread asset pairing or asset thread pairing. Okay. So this is how we can calculate eventually we are calculating the risk. If your asset is vulnerable to that particular threat, then it is known as risk. So the formula of risk is threats into vulnerabilities. Okay. So this is how we can calculate the risk, or even we can also calculate risk by the likelihood of the attack or the reoccurrence of the attack with the impact of the attack. Okay, multiply the impact of the attack. Let's say you have a server and there's a chance of a DOS attack on your server, DDoS attack. So let's say the likelihood of this attack is 3 times per year or in a year. And the impact is a huge impact, which can like crash your server or damage your server. Okay, so it is like a huge impact. So this is how you are calculating the risk. So risk is high in this case. And how do you know the risk is high? Because while calculating the likelihood and the impact of the risk. Okay, so these are some
Yeah, this
concepts.
one understood, ma'am. And then downside one, the another one formula is there, right? Threats into vulnerability.
Yes, yes.
Can you please tell about any example?
Okay, threats into vulnerabilities. So let's say, so this is the example of threats into vulnerabilities. Let's say you are checking the asset. Let's say you have 500 assets, and you are pairing that 500 assets with the 500 threats here. Let's say you have a list of, let me write formula again, which is threats into vulnerabilities. Let's say you have a asset. Uh, let's keep it simple. You have 5 assets in your organization. It can be PC, it can be any software, it can be any application, it can be any OS.
Okay.
So your assets can be anything. It can be intangible or tangible. Okay. So let's say you have 5 assets here, and now you are pairing your 5 assets with the threats. Let's say you have 10 threats in the market. Threats can be anything. So what is the definition of threats? So the definition of threats are, it can be anything which can harm your system illegally, right? It can be anything. It can be malwares. It can be any technique which the attacker are using for attacking your system. And the attacker are known as threat actors. The person who are using the persons who are like using the threats are known as threat actors. So they are like the attacker. So any item, any technique, any malware, any script, any payload, whatever the threat actors are using for harming your system are known as threats. So now we are calculating your threats with the vulnerabilities. Let's say we have 10 threats. We have a list of 10 threats here. Let's say we have SQL injection here. We have any kind of ransomware here, any virus here, any Trojan here, okay, etc. Now you will keep on checking. Now you are pairing your set. Let's say number one asset here. So now you are pairing your asset with the possible threats here. Means you will check 10 threats with the number one asset. So let's say you have 10 threads, now you're checking. Now you are pairing. Let's say out of 10 threads, 5 threads are there, which is your system is vulnerable of. Right. So we can list here 5 threads into, we have vulnerabilities, which is like 5 vulnerabilities. Or we can have many vulnerabilities which with the same thread that you have to calculate. It is only the theoretical, what we can say, theoretical formula. We cannot apply this in a numerical form. Okay, that you have to understand. We cannot apply
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
okay.
numerical form. It is just a theoretical formula of calculating the risk. Eventually, we are calculating the risk. For example, we have 5 threads. So your system is vulnerable to 5 threads out of 10 threads. So which means you have 5 risk here, right? Because, or let's say your system is vulnerable to 5 threads, but these 5 threads like are exposing the 10 vulnerabilities. So it means you have 15 risk here, which means let's take an example. Let's say you have your website here. Okay, you are running your website. So inside a website, let's say your asset is a website, because a website is also the part of the asset. Now your website is vulnerable to SQL injection. Your website is also vulnerable to XSS. Your website is also vulnerable to HTML injection. Let's say you have these 3 vulnerability inside your system. So these are the 3 vulnerabilities, which we can say you have 3 risk here, right? You have 3 risk here, but the technique may vary. For example, we have 3 vulnerabilities like SQL injection, XSS or HTML injection. So you can apply SQL injection on the login page also, or you can also apply SQL injection on the database also. So now you can see we have one thread, right? One thread, but 2 vulnerabilities here. That is what I'm like saying. That is like here we have 5 threads, but with the 5 threads, we can have multiple vulnerabilities. Let's say with the SQL injection. SQL injection is a first number thread. But with the SQL injection, we have 2 vulnerabilities on the database also or on the login page also. So it is like 2 into 1, 2. That is 2 risk here. Okay. If you're calculating with each thread with the each asset. So now you can imagine the complex process here, which is like you are evaluating each thread with the each asset. So now you can like imagine how many possibilities you have to perform here, how many combination you have to perform. This is for the one attack or one threat, which is SQL injection. With the one threat, we are facing 2 vulnerabilities. So here we can calculate 1 into 2, which is we have 2 risk here, not 1 risk. We have one thread here, but 2 vulnerabilities, which is 1 into 2, 2 risk here. Same as let's calculate the excesses. Excesses is a type of vulnerability. Let's say your website is vulnerable to reflected excesses or stored excesses. Like we have 3 types of excesses. You will understand in the CEH. So let's say we have 3 types of excesses: reflected, stored, or DOM. Okay. Now your website is vulnerable to reflected or stored, both. Now here you have 2 vulnerabilities, but one thread here, which is excesses. So here 2 into 1, 2 risk. So is it clear now?
Yeah, yes, I'm clear, but I don't understand this XSS only. But before that, you said trade risk, threat and vulnerability. That one clearly understood.
That SQL
What is
injection,
this
right?
XSS? Yeah, this all understand, ma'am. That XSS at last.
XSS is a kind of vulnerability. It is like a client-side vulnerability, which you can apply in the website. Let's say you have a website and you have a front end or client side of a website. If anyone can inject a payload on your JavaScript of the website, then it is known as XSS. Like we have
Okay,
XSS
okay.
payloads, just like we have SQL injection payloads, same as we have XSS payloads. So you are injecting a JavaScript payload inside your website. If the JavaScript payload is successful, then we can say that website is vulnerable. If the JavaScript payload is not successful, so we can say the website is not vulnerable. So it's totally depends on a website, like if your website is vulnerable or not. Okay,
Okay,
so it
okay, ma'am.
depends.
Understand.
That is
Okay, clear.
XSS. Okay, you
Okay,
will
okay, okay.
like XSS is a website vulnerability. So you will learn about this in the penetration testing. Okay, website penetration
Mm.
testing. So this is like how we can calculate risk. Now then we have risk management, which is like a detailed overview of how we can identify. Then we can evaluate, like we are assigning a dollar value to your asset. Now, there's one more catch here, which is cost-effective
Yeah.
solution. That is very important. Let's say
Okay. Instead
you
of
have a
that,
system.
we can
Sorry.
yeah. Instead of that, we can use any third party software, right? By like in SS software, we can
Yeah,
find
we can
vulnerability,
use
right?
third
Yeah.
party, but see, third party softwares are not that much reliable because manual is like a best method, but manual is like you have to put so much efforts, you have to put so
Yeah.
much time there. That is a drawback of manual. But yeah, you can combine manual or automatic both in that case. If you want to
Okay.
if you want to have an accurate result, then you can combine both manual force and automatic tools both. Okay.
Okay.
The for the risk management, for the threat modeling, for the calculating risk, for quality, for quantity, we have various tools here. Okay, but no tools are reliable that much. Okay, that is why we have a manual force, we have SOC analyst for
Okay.
evaluating the assets, for calculating the risk, etc.
Okay.
So
Normally, we are using Nessus tool to identify this risk.
Nexus.
Nessus. Nessus.
Oh
Nessus.
yeah, Nexus. Okay, okay.
Enable. Okay.
So now here we have cost effective solutions. So that is, let's say you have this system. Let's say you have this first PC, you are calculating the risk. And let's say the value of this first PC is, or we can say the price. Okay, that is, let's say $1,000. Now, so the price of the asset may vary. Like not only depends on the actual price, it also depends on various factors like how frequently you are using this PC, what is the outcome the PC is giving, or what is the product or what is the productivity this PC is giving. So that also depends. Okay, so let's say after calculating everything, we came to know that this asset value is $1,000. Now, let's say this asset is vulnerable or this PC is vulnerable to any kind of vulnerability, to any kind of threat or any vulnerability. But now let's come to provide a solution here. Let's say you know that, okay, this system is vulnerable. Let's say there's a high risk here. So now if there's a high risk, then you have to provide a solution here. But on providing a solution, or let's say you have to replace this PC, or you have to apply any other security mechanism to this PC. And the cost of that security mechanism or the cost of that safeguard that you are applying to secure the PC or to reduce the risk is higher than the cost of the PC. Let's say the cost of the safeguard is $10,000 and the cost of the PC $1,000. So there's no use of applying the safeguard here because we only follow a one approach, which is cost effective solution. Okay, that is very important for the examination also, or for the real life also, or for the CISP examination also. That is, we have to apply the cost effective method. That is cost effective solution here. You cannot apply the safeguard, which is more than the cost of your price. Like why are you applying that safeguard which is like more than the cost of your asset? So there's no use because, as you know, budget is limited. We have a budget, we have a security budget that is always limited. in the organization. So always follow this approach, cost effective solution. Your cost of the safeguard is always less than the cost of the asset you are protecting. Okay. So it will be like, let's say your price of this asset is $1,000, and let's say the safeguard is only of $100 or $10. Then you can apply. It is like the cost effective method. But if the safeguard cost is more than the cost of this asset, then it is no use of applying that method. So now you can use, either you can tolerate the risk, or you can transfer risk, that we will discuss later, or you can avoid risk, or you can ignore risk. So you can do anything, but you cannot apply the safeguard there, because there's no use. That is like useless. Okay, so always follow the cost effective solution. That is like very important for the examination. Let's say you are answering any question, and the question says which one is cost effective method. Okay, then you have to choose the answer. Out of four options, you have to choose the answer. Or let's say you, the question, like there's a question, let's say, what is like the most effective way or most effective safeguard for this particular asset? Then you have to choose on the basis of cost effective solution. Whatever the solutions are, whatever the options are, always choose the best options. And the option means always choose the cost effective solution. Let's say you have a PC, and the price of this PC is again $1,000, and the option saying, let's say, 10,000 or 1,000 or $10, or more than or let's say this no safeguard here. Let's say you have four options here, and the question is asking which option you will apply to secure this PC. Okay, like this PC is having the high risk. The cost of this PC, which is asset valuation, is like $1,000. And now which safeguard you want to apply? And let's say you have a cost of that safeguards. One is like you have $10,000. Second is $1,000, which is equal to the cost of your set. Next we have 100, or let's say $100, and then we have no safeguard. So which option you will select? Of course, this $100, which is like the cost effective solution. Okay. So always follow this one approach while answering any question in the examination. So to mitigate or reduce risk. So risk management is like a four-way process. It is like identifying the risk, then evaluate your asset, then find the countermeasure cost. Because it is obvious. The process is like step by step. First, you will calculate risk. Like if this risk is there or not. If risk is there, then you have to calculate the asset value. If it is okay to apply the safeguard on this asset value or not. So, and if it is okay, then you can apply it. And if it is not okay, like if the safeguard value is more than the cost of the asset, then it is no use of applying any safeguard there. Okay, that is all about risk management and threat modeling and risk metrics. So the goal of risk management is to reduce risk to an acceptable level, which varies depending on the organization's asset value, budget, and other factors. Okay, so it depends on, totally depends on that risk, like cost effective mechanism. Because honestly, we have like companies like put a very less budget for the security. Okay, even many companies don't follow any security mechanism to secure their company. So we have like a very limited budget in terms of security. Okay, they can spend like millions on their infra, they can spend millions on their advertising, but they only spend limited amount on in the security. That is like a drawback. So that is why we always have to follow the cost effective solution. So risk can come from various sources. Now this point is very important. Now what is the source of the risk? So the source of this risk is first any intentional attacks, or we can say any malicious attacks, which is caused by like any attacker or any threat actors. Second, it can be any human error or any oversight. And third, we have natural calamities. So whether you are in a company, whether you are designing any what we can say, any security strategy for your organization, or whether you are answering any question in the examination. Always follow this approach. Risk can come from any source. We don't need to focus only on one source, which is malicious attacks. That is obvious. This is we have to follow, but also we have to look for the human error or natural calamities like earthquake or fire or any unexpected event like flood, etc. Human error is like let's say any error which is caused by any of your employee in the company. Okay, that is why we always follow the approach of least privilege. Let's say you have a data administrator in your company, and that data administrator is handling your database. And why mistake that data with administrator just changes the value or just do anything which causes the data breach or which causes any further vulnerability or or any other create any kind of risk. So that is human error. Okay, so we always follow the approach of least privilege acceleration. So always provide least privilege to your employees of the company. Okay, and your that approach that what kind of approach you want to follow, like least privilege, high privilege, or we can say what kind of access you want to provide to your employee. Least privilege, high privilege, whichever, it totally depends on the task of the employee or the job role of the employee. Let's say your employee, you have your database administrator, then of course you have to give the higher privilege. And if let's say he or she is a SOC analyst or he or she is a software developer, then you can provide a least privilege. So just always follow this least privilege option. Okay, so we always follow that least privilege. So just try to give least privilege to each and every employee until it is very necessary. Okay, and also whenever you are providing the high privilege to any user, keep an eye on them. Okay, that is very okay. Always keep an eye on them, like what they are doing, whatever, like what operations they are performing, what activities they are performing. We are not saying that the employee is doing any kind of illegal stuff. We are saying that if a user have higher privilege, so the attacker only focus on these users which have the higher privilege, because higher privilege user can do anything in the system. So the attacker only target these kinds of user which have higher privileges. So we have to keep on checking the logs. We have to keep on checking, monitoring the traffic. We have to keep on checking the activities of these higher privileged user. Not because we are saying that the employee is suspicious. No, we are not just doubting on the employee. We are just making the organization more secure because that person has higher privilege, and the attacker can attack on that account which have the higher privileges. Okay, he or she can apply any number of social engineering attacks. Okay, so is it clear these three steps?
Yeah, clear, ma'am.
Okay, so
Yeah.
next we have risk assessment and risk response. So after risk management is divided into three parts. First we have risk analysis, which is also known as risk assessment. Okay, then we have risk response. And third, we have risk awareness. So risk management is divided into three parts: risk analysis or risk assessment, risk response or risk awareness. So risk analysis is like analyzing the risk, and risk response is like fixing the risk or reducing the risk. To be simple, if you define these in one term, which is risk analysis is finding the risk in the organization, and risk response is like fixing or reducing the risk. And risk awareness is like spreading the awareness about risk, spreading the cyber crimes, spreading the risk which the assets can face. That is known as risk awareness. That is like taking the precautions before curing anything. Okay, because as we can say that precautions are better than cure. So let's see the definition here. Risk assessment is like comprises risk management, comprises of two parts, which is risk assessment and risk response. These are the primary elements. So risk assessments involve evaluating the environment for risk, assessing the likelihood and severity of the potential risk. And here you can see the formula here, which is risk equal likelihood into impact of the risk. Okay, like likelihood and severity of the potential risk. Severity means how much that risk can cause harm to your organization. That is known as severity. Now, severity can be high, it can be low, it can be medium. So it totally depends on the impact of the risk. Like what is the cause of this risk or what is the consequences of this risk. Okay. And then considering the cost of countermeasure of each risk, which is like if we have to apply this risk or not. Countermeasure is like safeguard. If we have this X risk, so what is the countermeasure of this X risk? And what is the cost of that safeguard of this X risk? That is known as countermeasure of each risk. And here you can notice each risk. We are not taking the risk in the group, we are just checking the countermeasure of each and every risk which is arising or which is occurring in the company. Then we have risk response, which involves evaluating the and selecting cost-effective safeguards and security controls based on the cost-benefit analysis, then proposing these options to senior management for implementation. So here we have one more term, which is implementing options to senior management. So without the permission of senior management, we cannot do anything. Right. So after evaluating the risk, after checking which one is cost effective safeguard. So let's say for the ask risk, we can apply a safeguard mechanism. We can say that this safeguard is less than the cost of the asset we are protecting. So we can apply the safeguard because it is less than the cost of the asset. Okay. So we can apply. Now for applying, we need a higher permission. We need a senior management approval because they are the only one which will provide that we finance that safeguard, right? So for that we need the permission of senior management. Then we have risk awareness. So risk response is all about fixing or reducing the risk. Risk analysis or risk assessment is about analyzing the risk in the organization and identify the countermeasure. Okay, the cost of the countermeasure of each risk. Then we have risk awareness, which is like risk awareness is the effort to increase knowledge of risk within the organization. It is like spreading the awareness about malwares, spreading the awareness about phishing attacks, spreading the awareness about the assets with like risk with the assets, with risk with the softwares, risk with the outdated system, etc. So it involves understanding the value of assets, identifying the threats that can harm those assets, and the response implemented to identify risk. So we have to spread awareness in these three terms. First, what is the value of this particular asset? Like if this asset is compromised, then what is the impact of on the entire organization, or what is the impact on the day-to-day activities? Identify assets, which is like identify threats, which is like how many threats are like can be identified to this particular asset. Let's say phishing can be the one reason, first reason, which can cause harm to any asset. Second, malwares. So these are the we are spreading awareness in terms of threats. And third, the response, which is like the countermeasure, or which is like the safeguard which we can apply. So you can also put here that the safeguard is very highly it is like highly high cost. So the safeguard is of high cost. So we cannot afford, or the company cannot afford. So you can put here like that, or you can just spread awareness if this asset is compromised. Let's say if this X asset is compromised with a Y uh, thread, then we have this Z cost of the safeguard, which is very high. So we cannot afford this one. So please secure your asset with this Y thread. Okay, so this you can spread awareness. So risk awareness informs employees about the importance of adhering to security policies and consequences of security fears. You can also spread awareness in terms of policies. Like we have to follow these security policies which is designed by the company. And if you go against these policy, then you are ready. Then These are the consequences, or get ready to face the consequences. Consequences is in terms of anything. It can be in terms of penalties. It is in terms of terminating any employee, or any putting or file any case against any employee. Okay, that is risk awareness. So next here we have risk terminology and concepts. So first here we have asset. So what are assets for the risk? So anything used in the business process or task. It can be tangible or intangible, is considered as asset. Tangible like your PC, your servers. Tangible like you can touch, or intangible like your softwares, your applications. Okay, your OS, etc. These are intangible assets. Okay, so anything that are used in your business are known as assets. Then we have asset valuation, which is like you are assigning a dollar value to your each and every asset. Okay, that is asset value. Now, dollar value is in you how you can assign. It is not only the price of that particular asset. It is also the critical processes that asset performs. It is like the productivity that this asset gives us, and then actual cost and non-monetary expenses, like how many employees uses the same asset, etc. Let's say if you are talking about the router, so router is like how many users uses this router, the actual cost of the router, and the productivity of this router is giving, and the critical process which is performed by this router. So you have to evaluate these factors while assigning the dollar value. It is not only about the actual cost of the router, it is about everything, okay, which we are taking from the router. What are the values we are taking? What are the outcomes we are taking? Whatever the productivity we are taking from that particular router, how many users are using, etc. That is known as asset valuation. Then we have threats, which is like potential occurrence that could cause damage, destruction, alteration, loss, or disclosure of assets. Simple, that is like cause harm to your asset. Intentionally or accidental, both. Okay, so we have to prefer both. It can be accidental, it can be intentionally, like your malwares. Accidental is like it can be any human error, any natural calamities. These are also all part of threats. So while creating a security strategy for the company, always prefer both intention or unintention, both. Like what is intentionally and what is unintentionally. Okay. Then we have threat actors or agents which are involved in these activities. So individuals or entities or group of people that intentionally, okay, exploit vulnerabilities to cause harm. Okay, so it is all about intentionally. So the person who is performing or who is let's say there's a human error. So human error is also the part of the risk. Any employee who just mistakenly perform any human error, or mistakenly render any value, modify any value, or cause any risk. So he or she is not a threat actor. Threat actor only are the ones who are performing the attack intentionally. Okay. So now here we can say threat events. So accidental occurrence and intentional exploitation of vulnerabilities, whether natural or person made. That is both accidental and intentional, both. Then we have threat vector, which is like the path or means by which an attacker gain access to a target or cause harm. That is known as threat vector. So the path or the means by which the attacker is gaining access. For example, let's say you have your network here, and let's say you have 5 devices inside a network. Okay, so let's say this one device is an admin device. So the attacker wants to hack this admin device. So now this admin device is fully secured. So the attacker gain access first in these accounts or these PC. Let's say the attacker managed to gain access in this PC number 1. Then he started the lateral movement. And what is this lateral movement? Lateral movement is like a movement, or it is like a attacker is moving from one place to another, like hacking one PC to another. So like after gaining access to PC 1, the attacker gain access to PC number 2, PC number 3, and PC number 4. After gaining access, or after compromising the all the PCs, then attacker can attack the admin PC. Okay. So these are known as threat vectors. These are these 4 PCs. are known as threat vectors, because these are the PCs which the attacker uses to actually hack the admin PC, which is like a eventually like goal of the attacker. Okay. Then we have vulnerability, which is like weakness in an asset or safeguard that enables a threats to cause harm. Vulnerability is like same. If your website is vulnerable to SQL injection, then we can apply SQL injection. If your like website is vulnerable to HTML injection, so we can apply HTML injection. So vulnerability is also known as loophole. Okay. So next here we have exposure. Exposure is like it is like a being susceptible to asset loss due to threat potential for harm to occur. So exposure is like it is like if your PC is suspect, or it is like if your PC, if any attacker can cause harm to your PC, is like a exposure. Let's say you have a website, and let's say in your website you have a login page. And if your login page is vulnerable, then we can say your login page is exposure to any kind of attack. So it is like your login page is under suspect. Then we have risk. So the possibility or likelihood, which is like likelihood into the impact of your attack, that a threat will exploit a vulnerability to cause harm to an asset and severity of damage that could result. So it is same like the risk which we are discussing. Then we have safeguards, which is like measures that remove or reduce vulnerabilities. Okay, and safeguards can be countermeasure or security mechanism that we are applying to reduce or resolve the risk. Then we have attack. Attack is like an intentional attempt, exploitation of a vulnerability by a threat agent to cause damage or loss. That is simple. Then we have breach. Breach is also known as successful attack. The occurrence of security mechanism being bypassed or theft by a threat agent, resulting in a successful attack. So breach eventually means any successful attack. Let's say you have a network, and this network and here you have a firewall, and attacker that threat agent or attacker managed to bypass your firewall and successfully gain access into your network. So this is also the example of breach. Okay, because the attacker bypassed the security mechanism or any other security and then gain access. Or let's say you have a website, and here you have a database inside a website where your all the website database data is stored. And if the attacker is able to fetch data from your database or able to exploit your database and able to leak your data, then it is also the example of breach, which we can say data breach. Okay, so this is like a successful attack is also known as breach. So effective risk management involves evaluating and addressing both IT related or non-IT related risk to protect the organization asset and maintain a secure environment. So while we are creating any security uh, architecture or security mechanism for the entire company, or security plan, model, or strategy for the company, then we have to look for these both IT related task and non-IT related risk both. Okay, because security is not the responsibility of only of the IT or the security professionals. It is the responsibility of the entire organization. Okay, because attacker can gain and like gain access from anywhere in the entire organization. He or she can gain access from the marketing department. He or she, the attacker can gain access from the finance department. So attack can be arise from any department. It is not only of the IT or security. Okay, so that is why we say security is a business management tool. Okay, it is not a it is not what we can say, it is not a IT tool, it is not a security tool, it is like a business management tool. If you want to continue a business, if you want to that your business run in harmony, then you have to make your security a business management tool, not a IT tool. So that is why it is like a base of the CISP examination also. Okay, that's always use this concept, which is security is a business management tool. Okay, if you prefer this, then you can answer any kind of question in the CISP or commercial security, because this is like the base of the like the mindset of answering the question in the CompTIA or SISP examination. The organization should periodically assess risk and adjust these risk response to adapt to changing internal conditions, which is like you have to keep on updating the risk plan, or you have to keep on updating monitoring because of the changing environment of changing conditions. Okay, is it clear this much?
Yeah, clear, ma'am.
So let's see this figure. So here we have
Okay.
Threats can exploit the vulnerabilities, that it can result in the exposure, which is the risk, and how we can mitigate risk, which is the safeguards, and how we which result in protecting the assets. Okay, which are endangered by any threats. So it is like a cycle process or cyclic relationship of risk elements. Okay. So I think it is
Okay.
enough for today. So rest, we will continue tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah,
So is
okay,
there
ma'am.
anything you
Yeah.
want to ask?
Yeah, no, ma'am, clear. Understood properly.
So rest, we will continue tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.